ElevenLabs has made some changes to their long-form audio editor. This is the feature that was called Projects, and it's used for creating things like audiobooks or podcasts. It's now called Studio, but there's more than a name change. Before, it was only available to paid subscriptions, but now free users can have up to 3 projects in the Studio. Paid users get unlimited projects. Of course, you'll still have to work within the character limits based on whatever plan you're in. In addition to being available to everybody, there's also some interesting features, like pacing control, that lets you easily add pauses from 0.1 to 3 seconds in length anywhere in the text that you're converting to speech. There's also voice auto assignment, so if the text you bring in has multiple speakers or multiple characters, ElevenLabs is going to try and figure that out and assign a different voice to each character or speaker. You'll be able to edit or change which voices are being used, but it's going to try and automatically determine who's who and give them separate voices to start with. They've also moved GenFM into the studio and added a few bells and whistles. This is the tool that lets you create a podcast by either giving it a URL or uploading text. Now you can tell it whether you want it to be a single host or a host and guest having a conversation. Click generate and you'll have an editable podcast about the content that you provided. Let's take this thing for a spin and see what it can do. This is the ElevenLabs homepage. I'm signed in. I come up to the top right and click Go to App. Right now, we can get into the studio by clicking on Audiobook or Podcast, but I think these might be featured sections and may or may not always be there. So let's go over to the menu on the left-hand side. Underneath the products, there's Studio, previously Projects. That's what we want. You've got 4 options here: start from scratch, create an audiobook, create an article, or create a podcast. Start from scratch just gives you this blank canvas where you can start putting in the text you want to convert and work from there. The other 3 options give you a little bit more of a guided workflow. We'll start with create an audiobook. The first thing to do is upload a content file, and you can upload an EPUB, PDF, text, HTML, or docx. I'm going to drag in a text file of a sample that I had AI create for me. Then pick a default voice. I'm going to go with Mark. You can change the model if you want. The default is 11 Multilingual V2, and that's probably just fine. There are some faster, cheaper options and some of the older options if you want to go that route. For quality, the default is standard, and if you're on anything less than a pro plan, that's going to be where you're at. To go to high, ultra, or ultra lossless quality, you'll need to be on the pro plan or above. Since my little audiobook snippet does have 2 different speakers in there, I'm going to turn on this auto assign voices toggle. It's an alpha feature, so it might not work perfectly, but we're going to give it a shot, and it does tell us that this might take a lot of time to figure out for longer chunks of content. We'll just click create. We see the wheel spinning over here. When it's finished, we're ready to open up. This not converted yet label is just telling us that we have not converted this to audio that we could export yet. So we'll click on it. Front and center here is the text of my audiobook. Over on the right, it's showing us the main voice. If I drop that down, I can switch that to a different voice. I don't want to do that just yet. Then under that, we have used in project, which shows us 2 voices, Elena Santos and narrator. So ElevenLabs has figured out that there's 2 people talking in this project, the narrator and Elena Santos. Since I picked Mark as my default voice at the beginning, if I click the settings button here, I'll see that narrator is using the Mark voice. I can change the settings for that voice. I'm going to leave it right where it is for now. And then for Elena Santos, if I click the settings next to her, I see that it defaulted to Rachel, a legacy voice. So anytime it thinks Elena Santos is supposed to be talking, it's using the Rachel voice for her. I'm going to drop that down, and I'm going to switch that to Aaron. Down at the bottom on the right, it says this change will affect 3 paragraphs and 1 chapter that will need to be regenerated. Perfect, because I want all the places that Rachel was speaking to now be Aaron, because that's the voice I want to use for Elena. And it shows you by highlighting them in a different color over here in your main text area what text is assigned to this speaker. So I'll just hit save. I see that it changed the alias from Elena Santos to Aaron. That could get confusing for me, so I'm going to click the settings again, and here under alias, I'm just going to switch that back, just so it's easier for me to keep up. There we go. If I click my mouse in any text, it'll show me in the left margin the speaker alias. This is narrator, and when I get down into here, I have Elena and narrator both in this section of text. Let's start here where we have the 2 speakers and see how that came out. I'm just going to click right at the beginning, come up to the top, and I have 2 options. I can either play the selection or play until the end. Play selection will just play this snippet. If I hit play to end, it'll keep on going all the way down through. We'll just do the selection.
She looked up, seemingly unsurprised to see another person on this forgotten speck of paradise.
Beautiful morning for discovering lost islands, isn't it?
She said with a warm smile, closing her journal.
I'm Doctor. Elena Santos, botanical illustrator, though today I'm more of a professional daydreamer.
All right, that was a pretty good start. One thing I did not like is when she said, I'm Dr. Elena Santos, the pause after doctor was just too long, like it interpreted this period as the end of a sentence or something. So I'm going to try to fix that by just spelling out doctor. Now that I've made that change, up here at the top, it gives me a generate option so that I can generate this changed speech. I give that a click, play the selection.
She looked up, seemingly unsurprised to see another person on this forgotten speck of paradise.
Beautiful morning for discovering lost islands, isn't it?
She said with a warm smile, closing her journal.
I'm Dr. Elena Santos, botanical illustrator, though today I'm more of a professional daydreamer.
All right, that sounds much better. Now, I think I'd like to add a little pause in here between her saying her name and botanical illustrator. So just click right there where I want the pause, and I'll come here and click this little pause button. It says insert break. By default, it's a 1 second break. So just click on that. Instead of 1 second, I think I'm going to say 0.3 and apply. I come back up here. I don't have to hit the generate button. If I click the play button, it's going to generate that for me.
She looked up, seemingly unsurprised to see another person on this forgotten speck of paradise.
Beautiful morning for discovering lost islands, isn't it?
She said with a warm smile, closing her journal.
I'm Dr. Elena Santos, botanical illustrator, though today I'm more of a professional daydreamer.
Okay, I like how this line turned out, but I'm not real crazy about how it changed this one. When I generated or regenerated this section, it did the whole entire section, not just this last line that I really wanted to change. So let's select just this line that I want to change now, and we'll click Regenerate Selection.
Beautiful morning for discovering lost islands, isn't it?
Much better. If I want to adjust the settings for either of these voices that I'm using, I can just come over here to the Used in Project, click on the little settings icon. Since I selected narrator, which is being voiced by Mark, it's highlighted in the text all the places that Mark is talking. So if I make an adjustment, like maybe turning the style exaggeration up a little bit, it'll make that change everywhere Mark's voice is used in here, and it's telling me that this will affect 10 paragraphs in this one chapter, and they'll need to be regenerated. That'll adjust how Mark's voice sounds without having any impact on what the other character sounds like. Now, if I find a spot in my story where I want to change who's saying something, like maybe down here where he's talking about how she offered to share her coffee from a thermos, then maybe I have her finish the sentence. So I can just select this second part here, come over under Used in Project, and next to Elena, click Apply. And now if I select out of there, we've got our narrator doing his thing, and then she finishes this sentence. Now, of course, an audiobook's going to be a lot longer than this little snippet that I've dropped in here. You can add chapters by coming over on the top left, clicking Chapters, and then just add a chapter. You can also add some formatting by just clicking a section of text, and then up here at the top, click this text drop down. Maybe I want to make that a heading 1, and then for chapter 1, I don't know, we'll make that heading 2. Now, instead of coming in here and generating all the audio from this text in order like a normal person, I just came in and went straight to a couple of places and made some changes, which means there are a lot of paragraphs here that have not been generated yet into audio. You can tell the difference because some have this dark line next to them and some have this light colored line. You can click on each section and come up here and click generate, or you can just come up to the top, switch this drop down next to the play button to play until end.
The Lost Isle of Kalani. Chapter 1. An Unexpected Meeting. The morning sun painted the pristine beach in shades of gold as I stepped off my small boat.
And when you do that, it'll start playing through, and it'll also start working ahead of itself, going ahead and generating the audio for those upcoming sections that haven't been generated. It has me a little confused because I feel like if you're on a section that has already been generated and you haven't made any changes to it, then your option up here should be regenerate. But there were some times there where I was clicking on something that had, like here, we've already generated this, but it shows generate instead of regenerate, and we know that's already been generated and there haven't been any changes since that generation. So that's a little confusing. I'm not sure what that's about. But we know we've got everything generated now because we just played through it. So if we want to export this out of ElevenLabs, the first thing we need to do is convert it all to one audio file. For that, we come to the upper right-hand corner, click this Convert button. You can convert the entire project or just a chapter. In this case, our project only has one chapter, so it's really the same thing. Because I selected chapter, it automatically put in this chapter 0, which is what this is called right now, into the search. If I had multiple chapters in this project, they'd be listed and we'd be searching just for the one that matches chapter 0, which is this one. Now we can come to the right of that and click Convert. We can click this button to download, And if we want to see what versions we have, we can click the versions button and we see that we've got the one that I just exported. Before you export, you might want to come up here right next to convert, click on the little hamburger icon and take a look at your project settings. It has the general settings that we established in the beginning, but then under this export tab, you can toggle on the normalize volume. You can add metadata like your title, author, and other things. This publish tab is for audio native if you're using that to publish audio directly to your website. And then on the advanced tab, you have a text normalization option, which deals with how numbers and abbreviations are pronounced. And you've got a few options you can choose from there, whether you want to skip normalization altogether, always apply it automatically, just for English, or just for multilingual. If you made any changes there after converting and exporting, you'd probably want to do that over again to make those changes apply. The next workflow we have in the ElevenLabs Studio is create an article. We just give it a URL. So I'll paste in this URL to an article that I wrote on my website recently about the CapCut debacle. Pick your default voice, change the model if you like, and switch to a higher quality if you want and if you're on a pro plan or higher. I don't think there's anything in that article that's going to pick up on different voices, so I'm going to leave that toggle off. Click create. We'll take out this little name line because that doesn't help anything. It's brought in the full text of the article, and if I go ahead and generate this and convert it, it'll basically just have this voice, the one that says used in project, Michael C. Vincent, reading this article. Just like with the audiobook workflow, I can generate these one section at a time by clicking the section and clicking generate up top, or I can just start at the beginning, click this drop down and say play until end, and it will generate and play through the whole thing. Now let's look at the GenFM create a podcast workflow. For this, you can upload a document, an EPUB, PDF, text, HTML, or docx. You can import from a URL, or you can use an existing project that you already have in the ElevenLabs Studio. Now this is different than the article workflow that we just looked at because this isn't going to just read the article full text word for word. Instead, this is going to create like a podcast where either a single host or a host and co-host talk about the content that you uploaded in a document or via the URL or the existing project that you already had. I'm going to go to import URL and I'm going to paste in the URL to that article from my website. I could have selected use existing project since I already brought that URL in, but I wanted to do this from scratch. So this is the article that I want the podcast to talk about. Under format, you can choose from conversation or bulletin. Conversation will give you a host and a guest or a host and a co-host. So it'll be two people talking about the topic. Bulletin would be just one speaker presenting the topic. You can also set whether you want the duration to be short, default, or long. I don't have any idea if there are ranges of minutes for each of these or how exactly that's going to come out. All it says is that it can vary based on the format, the selected voice, and the language. Of course, that all makes sense. So let's just leave it on default. Next, pick the voices that you want to use. To change either one, just click on it. It'll give you a list of all your recent voices, professional clones, generated, and default voices. And if that's not enough, you can always click Find More Voices and go look for something different in the library. I'm going to pick Jerry for the host voice, and then for the guest voice, let's go with Juniper. You can change the model. I'm happy with 11 Multilingual V2. Podcast language, you can leave that on auto detect, or you can switch to any of these other languages that they have available. Leave the quality on standard or click it if you have a pro account or higher and want to use one of these higher quality options. And then if you click on this little gear icon down here, you can tell it what you want it to focus on. So if you want to make sure that your podcast host or host and co-host, if you're having a conversational thing, if you want to make sure that they're focusing on one particular area about this topic, you can tell it in here to highlight this area. They give this example of emphasize the importance of AI on education, which of course really wouldn't apply to my article, but it gives me an idea of how to tell it what I want it to focus on. I'm not going to use that right now. I just want to see where it goes with it. So I'll close that out and then just click generate. All right, it's written the podcast and that text is all front and center. Notice this is not the article the way I wrote it. This is a conversation between two people talking about what's in the article. Over on the right, it shows the two voices I used, Jerry and Juniper. I can click on the settings button next to either one to change the settings for either one of those. I think the best place to start is probably to come up here to the top next to this play button, click the drop down and say play until end. That way it'll go ahead and start generating each section into audio and it'll play through it as it generates it. So click play until end.
Imagine waking up one morning to find that one of your most used apps has completely vanished. Not just from your phone, but from the entire United States. That's exactly what happened with CapCut. And the story behind it is absolutely wild.
That's such a jarring way to start your day. I remember seeing that, "Sorry, CapCut isn't available" message and thinking my app was just glitching.
I'm fast forwarding through this so that we don't have to listen to this whole podcast right now, but it's playing through the entire thing and generating the audio as it goes. Making changes here works the same way it does in the other workflows. If I want to swap out Jerry, I can click the settings, drop down this Jerry voice, pick a different one. Now it changed the alias there when I changed that voice, so if I'm saying this character is Jerry and I'm using the Pablo voice, I would want to change that alias to Jerry. That's not really a thing here. Jerry's name isn't mentioned anywhere, so I'm good with that. Click Save. Notice over here beside the text, all of these that were Jerry that are now Pablo, those have a light gray line next to them, meaning they haven't been generated since they've been changed, so we need to generate those. You can do those one at a time by just clicking on any of these text selections and hit Generate.
Imagine waking up one morning to find that one of your most used apps has completely vanished.
If you don't want to click and generate those individually, come back up here and click this drop down and click Play Till End, and it'll play through the whole thing and generate each one right before it comes up to play. Maybe we want a little bit more style with Juniper, so we can click on the settings next to Juniper and increase that style exaggeration. We'll take it up to 10%. Be careful with the stability, particularly in long form projects. The more to the right that you have this slider toward the more stable, the more likely it is to sound similar or the same from one generation to another. But it can get a little bit monotone if you go up too high. On the other hand, if you move to the more variable, you can get more variation in the voice, sure, but it might sound like a completely different voice from one generation to another or one chapter to another. So I'm leaving those two alone. I just wanted to put a little extra style on it. Click Save. And now all the speech for Juniper has light gray lines next to it, indicating it needs to be generated again. So let's click here in one of these sections, Generate.
That's such a jarring way to start your day. I remember seeing that, "Sorry, CapCut isn't available" message and thinking my app was just glitching.
Oh, that's funny. It sounds like it glitched right when she said just glitching. If we try that and it's too much, we can come back to the settings. We can bring that style exaggeration down, turn it off. We can switch the speaker boost on or off, hit save again, come back to Generate.
That's such a jarring way to start your day. I remember seeing that, "Sorry, CapCut isn't available" message and thinking my app was just glitching.
If that sounded pretty good, I can come here and do the play until end, or I can just go through and one by one generate each of these sections and work with them until I get them exactly how I want. And remember, you can now add a manual pause, so just click wherever you want to add that pause. Come up here and click this little pause or insert break button. It defaults to 1 second, but you can click on that and change that to however long you want, anywhere from 0.1 all the way up to 3 seconds. Just like with the other workflows, when you're all done, once you have everything generated here and you're happy with how it sounds, you want to come up to the upper right hand corner and click on Convert and Convert Project. Click the Convert button, and once it's finished, you'll have a download button here where you can grab your file. I'm not actually going to convert that because I haven't generated a lot of that speech yet, so it wouldn't work out too well. ElevenLabs is definitely my favorite app for AI speech, whether it's text-to-speech, speech-to-speech, or the voice changer, or even creating sound effects, which I like doing in ElevenLabs as well. I'm very happy that they've finally added a simple way to insert a pause or a break within your text. I know a lot of people have been asking for that for a long time, and it's cool that the Studio feature is now available to free users as well. Again, up to 3 projects, and you do have to stay within your character limits. Let me show you what that looks like. So in the free plan, you get 10,000 credits per month. Remember, credits are characters, individual letters, spaces, whatever. The starter plan for $5 a month gives you 30,000 credits a month. This is also where you can create an instant voice clone. The creator plan, first month is $11, then after that it's $22 a month. That's 100,000 credits a month. And on the creator plan, you can create instant voice clones, and you can also create a professional voice clone. The pro plan, if you're interested in some of those higher quality outputs, that's $99 a month, 500,000 credits per month, and they do have higher limit plans as well. And I just learned that they do have a credit rollover. If you're on one of the paid plans, your credits can roll over for up to 2 months. They also now offer yearly plans, so you can get a little better deal. If you pay annually, you can get the starter plan for $417 a month or the creator plan for $1833 a month. If you're not using ElevenLabs yet, there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. It is an affiliate link, so if you end up going with one of the paid plans, I may receive a small commission at no additional cost to you. I do sincerely appreciate that. Thank you so much. But certainly don't feel obligated. Use that free plan to try it out, give it a test drive, see if it works for you. And then if you want some of the other features or some of the higher limits that come with the paid plans, well, then go for it. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you'll come back and see me in another video. Thanks for watching.